Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you to the Senator from Maryland for her great leadership and her tenacity with this bill from the very beginning. She's wearing red for a reason, because that's the color to get this done. I will always remember this bill by Senator Mikulski taking to the floor the last time we came so close to passing it, when she said to the women of America, suit up, square your shoulders, put your lipstick on, we're ready for a revolution. I also enjoyed hearing the comments from my colleague from Washington. I thought the analogy to the identity theft case, where sometimes people have a wrong done to them, whether it's discrimination or whether it is identity theft, and it is literally impossible for them to know it happened until sometimes years later. And that's what happened here to Lilly Ledbetter. I'm proud to join with Senator Mikulski and my fellow women senators and fellow Democrats and others who are here today to call for the Senate to take up and pass the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Restoration Act. The timing of the vote on this legislation, which is tomorrow, could not be more appropriate. We all know that our nation is in the midst of a financial and economic crisis of historic proportions, with Americans facing record job losses and the largest loss of wealth since the Great Depression. And we know that working families and women are bearing the brunt of this crisis. Since 2000, and these figures are actually before we had literally this meltdown in the last few months, but since 2000, even without those figures, the average family income in America has gone down $1,175 per year when adjusted for inflation. At the same time, the average family's expenses have gone up $4,500 per year. This includes higher mortgage payments, higher phone costs, gas prices, higher heating costs, higher health insurance costs. So the bottom line is that the average middle-class family has suffered a net annual income loss of something like $5,500 a year. And that is not even including all the losses to the 401k funds and the pension funds, all the losses because of the expenses of child care and everything that's been going on the last few months. And these aren't just statistics, Mr. President. I saw this when I was home over December. I saw it in the eyes of the woman at a cafe near Litchfield, Minnesota, who called me over to her table and said that she was taking a break from being a waitress because she was now doing 3 jobs, and she had just got her hours cut back at the 3rd job, and that was the extra money that she was going to use to buy her grandkids Christmas presents. The letters that we received in our office from the parents who said that they put their 3 daughters to bed, and then they would just go sit at the kitchen table and put their heads in their hands and think, how are we going to make this? The woman that wrote into us and said that she had gotten a small amount of inheritance from her father and that she'd planned to use it for her daughter's wedding, and that she now was using it to pay for her own retirement because her 401k and her retirement funds had decreased so dramatically. These are stories of women, real women, in Minnesota. And no one has felt the impact of this economic downturn, the loss in income, and the rise in costs more than the working women in America. It's often said that things have changed a lot for women in this country, and they have. It wasn't too long ago that we didn't have the right to vote. It wasn't too long ago that my colleague from Maryland, Senator Mikulski, was the only woman in this chamber. And now we have 17 of us. And it wasn't too long ago that I was kicked out of public 4th grade for wearing bell-bottom pants to school. I went home and changed, Mr. President, and returned without missing much of my classes. A true story by Mrs. Coity. It's a sad reality that still, 88 years after the 19th Amendment gave women equal voting power, and 45 years after the passage of the Equal Pay Act, that it still takes women 16 months to earn what men can earn in 12 months. When I was traveling around my state and talking to the women around my state, I find that these women aren't simply looking for a handout or preferential treatment. All they're asking for is a fair and equal chance to make a decent living. That is why it is so important that the Senate take up the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act on the floor this week. This important legislation will reverse a 2007 Supreme Court ruling, Ledbetter v. Goodyear, that significantly limited the rights of individuals to sue for gender-based discrimination. The facts that give rise to Lilly Ledbetter have been told, but I think they should be told again. She was a hard worker. People can picture her right now. I've met her many times, a delightful person. She worked at Goodyear Tire as a manager for 20 years. When she started at Goodyear, all the employees at the manager level started at the same pay. She knew she was getting the same pay as the men doing her job. But early in her tenure as manager, the company went to a, quote, merit-based, end quote, pay system. Payment records were kept confidential, as they are in many companies. And Lilly didn't think to ask what her male colleagues were making. She was happy to be a manager. She didn't think to look at her pay raise and to ask if the men in the department were getting the same the day the paychecks came out. I don't think many people think about running around and asking their colleagues if they're getting the same amount of money for the same work. As the years passed by, the pay differential between what she made and what the male managers were making just kept getting bigger. It was only after getting an anonymous note from a coworker telling her that she wasn't paid as much as the male managers that she finally realized what was happening. Soon after getting that note, she filed a legal complaint. But that was many, many years after the discrimination began. At trial, Lilly Ledbetter was easily able to prove discrimination. She could show what she did, she could show what the men did, and she could show the difference in pay. In fact, a jury found that sex discrimination accounted for a pay differential of as great as 25% between Lilly and her male counterparts. You think about how that adds up over 20 years of working. However, Goodyear appealed the jury's ruling, and the Supreme Court, in a 5-4 decision, decided that Lilly filed her case too late. Essentially, they ruled that she would have had to file within 180 days of Goodyear making its first discriminatory act. Now you ask, how would she have known this unless she was nosy and going around trying to look at people's paychecks? But this, which is as absurd as it sounds, is what the court said. Although the decision completely ignores the realities of the workplace, that employee records are confidential, that there is no reasonable way to know when discrimination starts, we now have an opportunity to bring the realities to light. We should pass the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act and allow a claim to be filed as long as the paychecks reflecting discrimination continue to be issued. In doing so, we will restore the original intent of the Civil Rights Act and the Equal Pay Act. Women cannot be expected to challenge practices they do not know are happening. By passing this law, women will be able to take those 4 months back, those extra months it takes them to catch up with their male counterparts. This legislation is critical in the fight for equality for women in the workplace, but there's still a long way to go. I'm honored to be the first woman elected to the United States Senate from the state of Minnesota. And today I'm humbled to work with my women colleagues in the Senate in this effort to advance equality for women across the country. Last week, we welcomed 2 new women to the Senate, and I see one of him here, my colleague from New Hampshire, Senator Shaheen, bringing our current total to 17, although our dear friend and champion on these issues, Senator Clinton, will soon be leaving us. Passing the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act would be a fitting send-off to Senator Clinton, who has dedicated her life to working towards equality for women. It would also be a fitting tribute to Senator Mikulski in her cry to square up your shoulders, suit up, put your lipstick on, and get this bill passed. And it would be a great tribute to Senator Kennedy. If he were here on the floor with us at this moment, I know that he too would be saying, get this done, pass this legislation, in his booming voice. So I implore my colleagues, for Senator Clinton, for Senator Kennedy, for Senator Mikulski, but most importantly, for the working women of America, that we pass the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor.